So I honestly don't have too much to write down for this one, and for most of these I wouldn't have written down anything had I been taking the exam myself. I'm just trying to map these out a little bit to make them a little bit easier to understand. For this one, this stimulus, I would basically summarize it as saying the newspaper has been unfairly skeptical. So the newspaper is unfair and overly skeptical of this guy saying he saw an alien spaceship, and we want a principle that conflicts with the argument. We want to say that the argument conflicts with one of these following principles. It's kind of like a cannot be true. Which principle, if taken as given, would destroy the argument? We want the two to be in direct contradiction or conflict with each other. So if the stimulus is saying the newspaper is unfair and overly skeptical, we want a principle that says, given the circumstances where someone like Mr. Hanlon comes to us, we're actually right to be skeptical of them. So which one of these choices says that given someone like Mr. Hanlon coming along, we should in fact be skeptical of their claims?
I want to say A.
Yeah, excellent. So, should not be presented uncritically unless we have evidence of an extraordinarily high standard, which Mr. Hanlon is not bringing us apparently. So we're right to be skeptical of him. 100% correct. Excellent. It suggests that we should in fact be skeptical of him. Did any of the other choices seem tempting on this one? D? Okay. So D's talking about people who think they observe should not publicize that fact unless they can present corroborating evidence. It's talking about the people, but our argument as a whole is concerned with the newspaper's behavior and what the newspaper should have done. It's not about whether Mr. Hanlon should bring his story to the newspaper or not. That is the background for what the newspaper ultimately ended up doing. But I see how that contradicts what Hanlon was saying. It's just not the core of the argument itself here. Looking at B, it's talking about an intermediary source. We don't really have anything like that in the stimulus. Looking at C, if they've trusted the source in the past, they should continue to trust it. That's actually going along the lines of the argument, not going against it, since we trust Mr. Hanlon as a member of the community. Then looking at E, newspapers should not publish a report. It's not about whether they should publish it or not. It's about them being overly skeptical or biased against him, and should they behave that way or not. Tough question.